Okay, what's up? What's your background?
Hey
Why is
Sam,
your name I play guitar sound familiar? But go ahead.
I've been watching for about a year. I was baptized last year. I'm Catholic.
Hmm.
My question is, well, I was looking at your blog just yesterday or day before, and I saw your latest article on a Bible era.
On who?
Bible era
Yeah,
era. How
that's
it was? Yeah. I wasn't aware that there was actually anything like that in the Bible, and so I was
Oh,
wondering what
there's
does it
hundreds
mean?
of them that they point to.
What does it mean for like infallibility and inerrancy?
Uh, I don't know what you mean. Infallibility.
Um,
What does inerrancy mean?
yeah. So like, if we say the Bible is infallible and inerrant, I
Yeah,
mean, is
infallible
it
meaning that it's completely reliable in what it says, right?
right?
Okay.
And inerrant meaning like no errors.
And even what do you mean by no errors?
Yeah, that's what I don't know. Is it the original scripture that was written that we're
Yeah,
talking about?
the belief is that when God inspired the authors, He would superintend their writing in such a way they won't make any factual mistakes. But it doesn't mean that extends to copyists, because what did I say earlier to someone? If you want perfect copies that have no variations, forget about just alleged discrepancies between two accounts that seem contradictory. Just to make sure copyists don't make mistakes in copying, that involves God working in a miraculous fashion that whenever a scribe, any scribe, wants to copy the Bible, the Spirit will somehow come upon that person, that all the scribes will then be inspired in such a way that they will not make mistakes in copying. Because prior to the printing press, anything that's written by hand, you like it or not, you're going to make mistakes. Even today with Microsoft Word, how many times we misspell something and then we see the word in red, signifying to us this is an error, correct it, right?
Yeah.
So if we do that today with this sophisticated technology, people without this technology writing by hand with an ink and in poor lighting or in poor conditions, you expect they're not going to make mistakes?
Yeah. No.
In fact, even when you're growing up in school, when you had to write down something on a chalkboard, I don't know if you're that young, but when you went to school, did they write things on a chalkboard?
Yep.
Okay, then you remember. And then you had to write it down, and the class did. Could you point to anyone next to you who then wrote down what he saw in the exact same way you did?
Yeah, no.
Why?
Because we're not perfect at
Unless God
copying.
does a work on all of you, then you're not going to have flawless copies from a group of students of what they see on the board, right?
Yeah.
That's the same thing with copying any book prior to the printing press. In fact, they have what they call scriptorums, where a person would dictate the copy he had, and the people sitting there would have to write down what they hear. Now, can you imagine the variations that would take place when they're doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then what the belief of inerrancy is that the original wording of the original author is preserved in the manuscripts, it's not lost, but then we have sufficient copies to know what the original wording is in about 97, 98% of the time. And even that difference, that 2% difference, that has to do with the fact of not being absolutely certain which of the two variants or three is the original, but it's still there. You want me there? Nothing lost.
Yeah. Thanks for clearing that up for me.
Let me give you the example of the one you pointed out. Even here, if you notice, this is one the Muslims love. Guys, I posted this yesterday from Gleason L. Archer. Second Chronicles 22:2 state that Ahaziah was 42 when he began to reign, but Second Kings 8:26 says he was 22. Now, the reason why you have a discrepancy is because Hebrew doesn't have numbers. Letters stand for numbers. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Hebrew, there were no numbers 1, 2, and 3. The letters represent numbers, like Aleph would mean 1, right? So the reason why we have a discrepancy in the Hebrew manuscripts is because at some stage in transmission, someone may have misread a letter. Instead of reading it 22, he saw the letter and he thought it meant 42, right?
Yep.
Now, how do we know what the original reading is? Well, we know Ahaziah would not have reigned at 42. He would be much younger. But secondly, because when we have ancient versions of the Old Testament written in various languages, we then find that in the Greek versions of Second Chronicles and Syriac, it reads 22. Some Septuagint manuscripts, the Greek and Syriac, read 22. So now we know what the original is. But even if we were not, which we could tell it's 22, because 42 he'd be too old. That means he'd be reigning with his father as a vice regent. Even if it's 42, and here it's 22, even let's say we don't know how to resolve the tension. How does this impact the very message and doctrine of the Christian church?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you've still got the fact that Christ was raised from the dead.
The only thing we'd have is that scribes poorly copied the original or had a defective copy, and that scribe poorly copied the one before him. So all you're saying is, well, now, yeah, somehow in the transmission, a copyist made a mistake, and the guy who came after him saw 42 when it should have been 22. But that also argues for the fidelity, the faithfulness of the scribes. What do I mean? The scribes saw, because the Jews obviously read their Old Testament, they commented, they saw the discrepancy, and yet they still kept 42 in some of their manuscripts. Why didn't they just change it? Because out of fear of God, they didn't want to change the 42 because they may assume, well, this probably is the original number, and I'm just going to keep it nonetheless and find a way of harmonizing it. So even the discrepancy that is still there testifies that for the most part, the scribes would not alter the text unless they were fully convinced that they're reading a mistake made by the scribe before them. They would keep it in unless they were convinced, no, that can't be right. Because remember, the scribe is copying a copy, and he knows the scribe before him ain't going to be perfect unless he had absolutely good reasons to think, no, man, that scribe must have been asleep, or maybe it was poor lighting or poor eyesight. That can't be right. I'm going to rectify it, which some scribes did. Like, oops, well, hey, it says 42, and I'm sticking with 42.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, thank you. Because I was also aware that there was an alternative explanation to do with the age of the dynasty, but I wasn't sure whether or not to bother with it. And because, obviously you'd be aware of other instances where you have to reach for an alternative explanation. Yeah. So,
well, here, if you do this, I uploaded a series of posts that Jay Smith and team did, but it's defunct. It's on his website. I found it's 101 cleared up contradictions in the Bible. Supposedly 101 discrepancies. So there it is. You just put 101 contradictions comes up. I broke it down in 4 installments. Let me get you the link to the first one. Yeah, but the point is, I don't address Bible discrepancies unless someone is really asking from a sincere heart. Why? Because when oftentimes, and I'm sending it to you in the private chat, when oftentimes people ask me about Bible discrepancies, they're not asking to see if it can be harmonized. Because if something can be harmonized, then there's no true contradiction, right?
Yeah.
If I can give you a plausible harmonization, that means it can't be truly a contradiction, because a real contradiction means you cannot harmonize it. But we have to be careful. Let me go a step further. My harmonization doesn't mean it's the solution. Unless I have the authors in front of me to ask them, any harmonization is simply an attempt to show there is no real contradiction, because a real contradiction means it cannot be harmonized. But if I can harmonize them, that means there is no real contradiction. But it doesn't mean my harmonization is the answer, because unless I have the scribes in front of me, I don't know how they would answer. You get my point, right?
Yeah.
So when I give you a harmonization, I want everyone to listen. I'm giving you stuff that you may not even learn in seminary. I'm not boasting. If I give you a harmonization, right? A harmonization. The point is to show if they can be harmonized, then there are no real contradiction. Because a real contradiction means you can't harmonize them. Right?
Yeah.
But if I can harmonize them, that means it's not a real contradiction. But my harmonization is not inspired. It's not revelation I got from God telling me that's how you harmonize. So even the harmonization, though it will show they can be harmonized, and be reconciled, that doesn't mean that's the answer, because unless you have the writers in front of you, you don't know how they would explain the discrepancies.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when you're looking at harmonizations. They're all attempts. And you may have 5 different harmonizations of the same discrepancy. But that just tells you if I can come up with 5 ways to resolve the contradiction. Because what is a contradiction? Something that cannot be reconciled. Right?
Yeah. So you're just proving that you can.
Say it again. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
You're just demonstrating that you can reconcile it, but you don't know exactly how. Yeah.
Because let me say I give you 5 proposed harmonizations. All of them resolve the tension, showing there's no contradiction. But which of the 5 is the answer?
Yeah, you don't know.
All you need to rest at is, if it can be reconciled, there's no real contradiction. Next. But why I don't engage people on alleged Bible discrepancies? Because most people, they don't want an answer. Because when you give an answer, they'll nitpick, or then they'll throw another 10 at you.
Yeah.
So that means they're not asking because they want to know. Let's say you ask because you want to know. But when someone asks and I answer, then he brings me another 2. That means this guy doesn't care. He just wants to destroy faith in the Bible. So then I send him to whatever religion and whatever God he believes. And if it's a Muslim, I send him to the black stone to kiss it.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Did that help you? Any other questions, or you're good?
That's all. Thanks, Sam. And
God
thanks,
bless you.
William.
Stay strong. Pray for me and you that we finish the race by the blood of Christ.
Thank you.
God bless you, brother.